Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan Souza. I'm one of the senior investment managers here at Sharewise, and we're here this morning with Noel Ong. Now, Noel is the Executive Director of Taiton Resources. Now, Noel's been kind enough this morning to dedicate his time and expertise to providing us with an update on one of their core projects, and then he's going to open the floor up to a bit of a Q&A, which is always, I'll be running that one. So if you have any questions you'd like to submit for me to ask Noel after the presentation, please submit them through using the Q&A function on Zoom, and I'll ask away. Noel, thank you again for your time this morning, mate. It's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for the time to present. I'll just share I've got a little short presentation.
Brilliant.
Does that come up?
Sure does.
So it's a high purity quartz mining story that we have at Kingsgate, and Kingsgate is in New South Wales, just 25 k's east of New South Wales. It is a well-known area. They used to mine these quartz and high-grade molybdenum. So uniquely, it is a high-grade molybdenum high purity quartz story, which, you know, in the context of what I'm trying to say, is a juggle between which one is the better fit. But we'll see what we can proceed. So that's just a disclaimer, but that is pretty much the side of our Hammond property, where you see the hole in the ground with water. That's a pipe, what we call a quartz pipe, and to the above that, it's where the trial mining pit, which I will talk about over time in the presentation, it's been filled in. It was worked between 2006 and 2009. I think it was filled in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. But that's what I refer to as a Hammond property. It's a property that Taiton has bought outright, so we don't have any issues with land access going forward. And you can see slightly to the right there, there's another hole in the ground with a bit of water in it. That's also another pit, a quartz pipe, and slightly northerly direction, but to the left of the picture is also another pipe. So in summary, we have three main projects in South Australia and New South Wales. Kingsgate project is obviously the focus for us at this point in time. It is an advanced production pathway story with high purity quartz, and as I've mentioned, it's also high-grade molybdenum. The Challenger Gold project is Challenger West project is in South Australia, as well as the Highway project, which is more of an ICG story. We have released a couple of announcements relating to each of this stage, but in the context of today's discussion, we're focusing on the Kingsgate project. As I said, it's 25 kilometers east of Glen Innes. It's about 600 k northeast of Sydney, and about 400 kilometers from the port of Brisbane. As I said, ASX Resources spent 15,000 meters of drilling between 2005 to 2009. We have, a lot of data that can stem to a scoping study. We know the approximate tonnage of quartz because they've done a lot of the studies. It's all well documented. It's released on the ASX. Any search on that would find that easily. Recently, we sampled some quartz samples. You can see on screen there. We got one sample to 4 nines, 99.99% silica, which was fantastic, and it kind of puts us on that high purity quartz business circle. So as we all know, the HPQ's business is something that is growing day by day, and the source of these HPQ are not so easily replicable, as I will try and talk you through that. The Kingsgate project, basically there's 54 pipes, there's 94 all together. There's 54 pipes up to 20 meters diameter. The depth, 50-meter depth, I mean, there's a lot of depth in there. We've seen some historical workings there, and we believe it's greater than 50 meters. There's a good network of adits and shafts all over the place, even within the Hammond property, because that's where the main focus of historical work. As I mentioned, during World War II, they were mined for the piezoelectric quartz. So the quality of the quartz is well known, and it's now a case of the business of HPQ has brought about the fact that we can now move this forward in that space. You can see in that photo that it's really clear quartz that we're talking about. And the diagram there with the dots there, you can see those dots basically represent known pipe locations, and the majority of that has been worked on the Hammond property. So that's the critical part of the Taiton story at Kingsgate. Here's just a spread of samples that we picked up. You know, the sample goes from, you know, the clear stuff that you can see, and the one in the middle here where it's white in color, you can see it's glassy white, not matte white. That's the majority of the quartz that we see in the veins on the walls. But we see these glassy material, as you can see to the edge there, they come off that as well. So the process going forward is to try and categorize what suite of quartz we have and where the main business would lie. Here's just the table that's come up from a recent announcement. These samples are put in basically as rocks. We didn't wash them. We did not say, look, only put in those ones that without any inclusions or things like that, or any colorings. We just basically wanted to have an idea where each one sits. So you can see they're very, very good numbers. 3 nines in the major parts, but the standout was the clear crystal with 99.99%. So we're not saying we have this number as a mass or as the majority of it, but we do have the suite, and the next stage for us is to put all this together. So just quickly, you know, submit samples to establish the suite of types of quartz, as I mentioned, and their respective quality. We're basically now knowing where we're reaching out to potential buyers to establish relationship, and establishing a process to provide all this information for potential off-takers that require, you know, the quantity and the quality, and also then what quartz market are we targeting. Obviously establishing an exploration program in both tenements, upgrade the known resource potential of these pipes, and establishing a pathway to, you know, a mining scenario. So really that's a very brief snapshot of where we are. We early stage. We don't want to make ourselves out as that we're mining these quartz tomorrow, but we're definitely in that space.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I really appreciate the update on the Kingsgate project. Now, I've got a couple of questions to kick us off with, and then we'll see how we go with questions submitted from participants. But the first one I've got is obviously quartz doesn't seem to be, you know, a common knowledge critical mineral when it comes to the market. You know, when people are thinking of the top 5, quartz is the one that's up there. Now, just to enlighten participants, and to be honest with you, mate, myself, when it comes to uses of high purity quartz and marketability, where does it really stem from?
Look, there's a big market for quartz. I mean, the standout one is obviously the semiconductor story, the solar panels. And if you talk to people, if you look at a lot of presentations out there marketing HPQ, you know, the prices go up to as high as $50,000 a ton. So market where most people talk about maybe it's about $1,000 to $5,000 a ton. But you gotta put into the fact that, you know, these are process benchmarks, meaning your quartz going through a lot of processing, and there's going to be a cost inputs in there.
Yeah.
So look, the market is as I said, we're realistic in how we want to tell this story. We are talking about, you know, maybe looking at we know, first of all, we know that Kingsgate has the quartz that is optimum for optical type users.
Okay.
And obviously from the piezoelectrics story in World War II, we know that exists. And then by the last trip I had, I spent about almost 2 weeks on site just trying to get a feel for what we're looking at, what it's all about. Look, the majority of that stuff might be in that 99.95 place, but not the 99.99, but that could be the cream. It's kind of that the pink diamonds in the Argyle diamond story. The pink diamonds was the cream, but the business was in the industrial diamonds. So that kind of viewpoint would allow us to move slowly and find the market space of where we want to be. If we make $500 a ton, or do we make $1,500 a ton, net margin is what we're looking at. So rather than chase the $5,000-$10,000 when your margin is not so good, where's the business? I think that's the key for us at this point in time.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, now obviously it does appear with the Kingsgate project that the quartz is the obvious focus. What about the molybdenum on the site?
So this is where the business of Kingsgate comes into its own. The quartz is obviously the limelight at this point in time, but the high-grade molybdenum and the bismuth and things like that, and there's actually tungsten in that space as well if you throw into it. So those will work as credits. We know there's high-grade. ASX have done a lot of work in terms of where you are. Rather than processing a molybdenum product, we could actually just put this as concentrates. So that those credits would help that overall business, the business of Kingsgate. It's where I want the market to see us, is that we're not wanting to be a high HPQ business standalone. We want to be a business where HPQ is part of the high-grade molybdenum and potentially bismuth, and then the credits work together and create that business, that net profit margin. So I think that's the key, and the nature of Kingsgate. And at the front of my presentation, I talk about the pedigree of Kingsgate, is that we have that ability to add those credits to the business model. So no one commodity needs to stand out alone by itself, which makes, as most people know, the business much robust.
Okay, brilliant. Now, just to shift back to the quartz briefly. Now, what are the key factors at the moment that are influencing the high crude of quartz prices, and how do you anticipate these factors having an impact on Taiton's operations?
Look, HPQ is kind of the three-letter, the cinnamon that people put out recently, right? It's quartz business has been around as long as we have glass. So, but as we progress to the new energy world, we need there's an issue with semiconductors and all this kind of jazz. The pricing of that will evolve by itself. It's a natural progression. And as we know, it's gone from not so fanciful to very fanciful today. In 10 years' time, it might be more another category above. So in terms of the business of quartz, the key is actually all measured by the level of impurities. So your source has to have low impurities, and low impurities come from the geology. So if your quartz is exposed to geology that doesn't have that unique low impurities, your quartz is going to suffer. For Kingsgate, where we look at it looks like a very hydrothermal process. It means, and we know there's low impurities because historically, and the results that we've shown there. So if your geology doesn't spew out a lot of impurities, you're going to have that ability to sustain that business model going forward in that HPQ space. And I think that's important. I think that's what people need to understand, is that you can have a lot of quartz all over the shot, as we know, and being an exploration geologist over these years, I've seen my fair share of quartz, and I'm pretty sure everybody has. But the point is, does it have that low impurities, natural low impurities? And the impurities of the key components like aluminium, titanium, they need to be outside the crystal structure of quartz. And if it is, you can get rid of that quickly. If it's not, you have a problem. So I think that's the key component people need to look at in terms of the business of HPQ.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification there. Now, obviously, a big question that's going to be on a lot of investors' minds is going to be the progression of the Kingsgate project and where you see it developing over the next kind of, let's say, 3 to 5 years. Do you have a suggested timeline in mind currently, or is it very much just going to progress on how quickly you can develop offtake agreements?
I think the business of HPQ or high purity quartz or high purity silica, whichever category you want to look at, is actually driven by the off-takers. The off-takers will come to you and say, look, I want this and I want it at this number. Can you supply me? And so the two factors would be, can you supply me at that rate, whatever rate that will be, and the volume. And that will drive the business. So in terms of where I see it going, as I said, clearly in the steps to do, we need to establish that contact with these guys quickly, establish a point of sending samples to them. And, we're not looking for the HPQ. We know where it is. We've got drilling results to tell us where it is. The question would be, can we sustain the grade and can we sustain the volume? So we've got about 15 pipes within the Hammond property itself. So we need, and there are quartz veins that are not recorded already from my 2 weeks on site walking around. So to establish that is not a problem. So that there is no issue with the volume for us. So now it's the market. So the market is an interesting thing. They may need 99.3 or 99.5 or 99.99. So, and there are many categories you can fit yourself into. So time frame, 3 to 5 years. 3 years could be the quick one, but the biggest sort of overhang for us is obviously we need to establish a relationship with the off-markets. Either they help us fund that progression, or we need to find the equity funding from outside to move in that direction. So, but timeline can be very short. We could be talking about, assuming we transition ourselves to a mining license, 2 to 3 years or 1 to 2 years. So it really depends what falls on and how we get those ducks lined up.
All right, brilliant. Well, thank you for that update there. Now, obviously, Kingsgate appears to be the flagstone project at the moment for Taiton. How are the other projects looking? How are they progressing?
So the other projects are basically at the point where we're about to drill. So the drilling will then unleash whatever value that may be. And as we all know, when you start drilling and you're getting the truth machine in, you are going to get a binary result, either yes or no. So that's on hold at this point in time till we establish a more sustainable funding process. While with the funding that we have at this point will allow us to move Kingsgate. So Kingsgate's going to take priority because it's the lower hanging fruit, easier for us to add value to the company. So those two will just be, as it is until we find more, and we'll do what we need to do to maintain the value for those projects. But obviously the focus is going to be on Kingsgate for this time being.
All right, well, thank you for that one. Now, obviously, it feels like the Taiton is in a bit of a transitional phase, the company as a moment. So when it comes to a longer term vision for the company, do you see it, remaining in the space as like properly an explorer, or do you see it shifting into a miner?
Look, when we first started the journey, Taiton has always been about adding value and creating a mineral resource house. I don't think that has changed. And then what does the creating a mineral house mean? Is that we need to be able to get to a point where we establish a mining or a self-funding mechanism that may be in terms of Kingsgate, whether we're mining it or we do a M&A and move it out and get some value back into the company. But we are about an explorer finding to a path where we get a mining economical deposit, as they say, and how we exit from that, it's a work in progress. We're not thinking, yes, we only want to be an explorer and we only want to be a miner, but we're all about creating that value in-house for the company and creating a mining house, as they say.
Yeah, I understand, Ryan. Well, thank you for that. Now, just one more from me, mate, to finish things off. When it comes to the inherent risk management associated in the exploration activities, how do you guys balance exploration expenditure and associated with financial prudence and obviously essentially trying to obviously needing to fund your exploration, but also trying to maintain shareholder value?
Well, that's the million-dollar question that every company on the ASX is trying to balance. So, we raise, and I do a lot of my fundraising and discussion with the people out of Southeast Asia or the ASEAN community, and they don't get how we raise all this money, and everyone wants us to spend the money as quickly as possible. So, yeah, in that sense, we've done a lot of the I guess higher risk kind of work to establish the projects where they are. So now going forward, it's an easier process for us to answer your question because the value is on the tip of a tongue, if you want to use that expression. Kingsgate's has its value driven by what we're in the process of creating that value now for Kingsgate. Highway and Challenger, obviously, whatever funds we have, the budget to drill those holes. And then again, as I said, there's going to be a binary outcome. And if it's a positive one, then that value will be created from there. And, who knows, we could, these projects could be spun out of the company to create another company just solely to tackle that. So, yeah, it's not a easy, it's a fantastic question, but it's probably one that's really hard to answer.
It is really hard to answer, though. But really appreciate your comments there. Well, no, that realistically wraps everything up for us today, mate. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
Look, market's tough. I think in this point in time, I just want people out there to put us out on your watch list. Have a look at what we're doing. The Kingsgate project has a great opportunity. It's unique. It may be the most unique one in Australia. It's a bold statement, but we're working through it. There's a lot of history about the Kingsgate Quartz. We're learning it as we go. And we are definitely wanting to move this to kind of create some value for the company. So yeah, all I can ask is for you guys to follow the story. Feel free to contact me. Everyone knows that my email's out there freely for people to send questions and things like that. So yeah, just follow us and keep us on your mind.
All right, brilliant, Noel. Thank you very much for your time and expertise this morning, mate. Really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.
Thank you.